One putting up with us being a minute or two late getting started. As you well know, we were all in a run to get up here. First of all, I'd like to thank all the committee members that came to our committee dinner last night. It's very enjoyable. I appreciate getting to know everybody better and get to see lots of folks. Here's where we're at on the bills we're going to hear. We're going to vote. We'll have an opportunity to vote on two. And if you look in your committee folder for 423, it's Dubnik, it's Bill, and 448, it's Chuck Williams. They'll be here directly. And the others are for hearing. We're going to listen and learn and find out about him. That's 392 with Representative Fleming, 230 Bernal, and 269 Evans. So these people will be coming in because as folks know, their committee's going all over the place right now. And so everybody see those in your folders. Crack staff is on it. They got them in there, and we appreciate them very much. Representative Fleming, we'll start off with you on House Bill 392.
My witness up with me?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And this is Trevor Addison with Georgia Military College. He works with their finances for the students there, and he's come today to help me make sure I get all this right. Mr. Chairman, many of your members in the committee know this, some may not. There's only one public university in Georgia which is not directly under the Board of Regents, and that's Georgia Military College. It is one of our creatures. We created it, the legislature, and we fund it directly. It's a great school in Milledgeville, but they've even branched out all around the state to have several campuses. One of the largest ones is in my home county of Columbia County, and they serve a varied array of students, but they particularly serve, I guess you would say, the non-typical students, particularly over in my area in Columbia County. A lot of military personnel in my area over in Columbia County and Augusta area, and many of them go to Georgia Military College to pursue higher education. So it's a great school. I'd love for some of y'all to be able to come down. I know Representative Williams over there, who represents Baldwin County, can tell you all about it. Their campus is actually the former state capital of Georgia. It's a great history there. What the bill that I'm bringing to you today about, Mr. Chairman, is that although they do offer a unique educational opportunity for students and are a great place for kids to get an education in our state, they have some differences between them and the university, the Regent system, for lack of a better explanation. One is that they're still on the quarter system. That's not strange at all to me. When I went to the University of Georgia, we were on the quarter system there. But as you all know, our Regents moved to a semester system. So what happened is that we have a very successful program in this state called Move On When Ready, or dual enrollment, where we allow kids that are still in high school to begin their college career. It's been great for the Georgia, and I think most people's opinion. Of the 13,000 students that attend Georgia Military College, something in the range of 1,500 or so are involved in this program. Unfortunately, Georgia Military College has had a problem with the funding for that program in this way for over a decade now, and they've been trying to get it straightened out. And the Georgia Student Finance Commission finally told us in writing, you need to change Georgia law to work this out. And here's what it is. They have 5 teaching periods, I'll say for a better term, 5 quarters at Georgia Military College. The way our law is written, it says that these kids can get reimbursed for this many, just 4. So what you have before you is a bill that is very narrowly drawn just to allow Georgia Military College to be able to fund these kids for the full year if they want to attend that. Not all do. Trevor and I were talking beforehand, and it's a guesstimation, but we're thinking of these kids who participate in this, these students, we're only talking maybe 500 or 600. But it causes a big problem for them, for kids that are go-getters that want to get their college education. They basically have to stop going to school for a quarter. And if we would pass this bill, it would change that. So the only problem that we have heard from so far, and the chairman and I had a chance to talk about this before the meeting, was the idea that because we, the legislature, directly fund this, that it could change the amount that we need to appropriate, because if you had kids going to school one more quarter. You would think in the long run it wouldn't change it that much because they're all going to get the same amount of education. It's going to cost the same amount, but it could cause a change in one budget year for us. And I hope that the Georgia Student Finance Commission will tell us where they got those numbers from today so we can try to figure that out and make this great college work for these kids. Mr. Chairman, that is an overview of what the bill simply does. It's not that complicated. Like I said, I have somebody smart here with me today who actually works with this and I guess pulls his hair out for these kids on a regular basis trying to resolve this problem. If I could, let him introduce himself and let him make some comments.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you all today on House Bill 392. Just to kind of reiterate what the representative said, students attending all 5 terms are eligible to receive Move On Ready for only 4 terms. The 5th term is they're not eligible. For example, if a student starts in the summer term, funds are not available for the spring term because the student cannot, and also the student cannot join back at the end of our winter term. They cannot attend their high school semester because that's in the middle of the high school semester. So these kids are not in a class at all, not a college class, not a high school class for the remainder of that spring semester
Okay,
of high school.
I didn't follow that, and I bet maybe some of y'all didn't either.
Okay.
You know it very well, but I
I will,
want you to take the from we don't know
Sure.
what you do very well.
Absolutely, and I
Thank you.
apologize. For example, if a Move On Ready student wishes to attend all 5 of our 5 terms, summer, fall 1, fall, winter, and spring, we would bill Georgia Student Finance Commission for summer term on a summer invoice. They would then come fall 1 term. We would bill fall 1 as a fall invoice. They would then come winter term. We would bill winter term as a spring invoice. They are then not eligible for any further Move On Ready funding, which means they cannot attend our spring term. The problem lies where our winter term ends in the middle of the high school's spring semester. So once our winter term ends, they are no longer in a high school class. They're also no longer in a college class unless they wish to pay out of pocket for that class.
I'll pause you just a second.
Okay.
So what is the beginning date of your summer term? That's the first segment you started. Does that coincide with the school year? Or is that
No,
something
sir.
of yours?
For example, the 18 summer term will begin on May 26th. That's usually probably the end of the high school's spring semester.
Okay, yes, sir, continue. I just see,
So should a student not be able to pay for the spring term courses, like I said, the student will not be able to be enrolled in college courses because the high school semester is already underway, and therefore they cannot enroll in high school courses. The confusion is also among high school counselors, who are the ones tasked with helping these students apply for this scholarship. Their confusion is with the invoicing process. You'll see in your packet. Do you have?
I'm going to pass them out.
Representative Fleming will pass out a packet, and you'll see on attachment A chart that we have come up with. That's very convoluted. To explain to the
that's great.
to explain to the which will explain to the student, if you attend X term, you complete X application. Just because you're attending fall doesn't mean you submit a fall application. So that explains that. GSFC has issued guidance to GMC for processing Move On Ready applications, stating that Georgia law does not allow Georgia Student Finance Commission to allow 5-quarter payments within one state fiscal year. And in your packet as well, you'll see 2 letters where we have reached out to the Finance Commission, and you'll see their responses on how Georgia law will not allow them to accommodate this. So,
If I could jump in there, Mr. Chairman, just 1 second. What I'd like to do now is pass out to the members of the committee exactly what Trevor's talking about. And what you're going to see is I've given you, there's a lot of good facts in here about Georgia Military College. But the first thing you're going to see, if you leave it on the page where I give it to you, you're going to see a 2016 letter where the Georgia Student Finance Commission says you got to change Georgia law to fix this problem. That's what the bill does. If you flip over 1 time, you're going to see a 2005 letter when they were trying to straighten this out. They've been trying for over 10 years to get this right for these kids, and have done everything they can. And I want to emphasize that because I know we always like for people to work within the process to try to get it worked out before they resort to legislation. But we've done all we can, and the Georgia Student Finance Commission has told us in writing, you got to change the law to fix this problem.
I just have a question, just as we're passing that out, and this is a terminology question. Representative Fleming uses the word quarters. You know, there's 5 quarters in a year. Now, I'm not a math guy, but and then you're using terms. And how do those coincide with a regular school year?
Georgia Military College is you either have basically you have a 4+1 quarter system. The +1 is the summer term. So you have 4 quarters with for the state purposes, you have a preceder term of summer. So that's how
And
they
they're all
come.
looking, the committee's looking at me.
There you go. Fall 1.
What date does that
Okay.
start? Pardon? Yeah, you see, I'm thinking,
Okay,
there's some,
I can go through
you got
the
some
starting end dates.
educating to do here.
So, for example, our 16 fall 1 term classes began on July 30th. They would end on September 25th. Our fall term would begin on October 8th and end on December 4th. Our 17 winter term began on January 7th and will end on March 5th. Our spring term will begin on March 18th and end on May 21st. And the summer term would begin on May 27th and end on July 23rd, which is also in your packet as well at the end.
Committee feel, got it, that better? So,
Well, I'm okay. I just have one question.
okay, Representative.
Okay, just thinking of the school calendar, so most of the kids don't start school they start school in August, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they couldn't attend the fall, but they could attend the winter? They could start in the winter?
The students are allowed by law to attend our school even in the summer when the high school's not even in attendance. So they're actually eligible to attend all 5 terms
Okay.
and receive high school and college credit for those courses they attend.
Okay.
Okay. While we're pausing, any other members have a question for? Okay, right there. Go ahead, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think I got the wrong one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you prorate the money on this, the 5 quarters? Is that what's being proposed here?
No proration. Georgia Student Finance Commission sets a dollar amount per term that we're allowed to charge up to 12 hours per term. So we would just continue that with this spring term, I guess you'd say, that we're trying to get approved. The average tuition dollar amount, I would say, is $122 per hour that they allow us to bill them up to 12 hours. So even if the student is enrolled in 15 hours for fall, we can only bill 12 hours. We write off 3.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand how it works with people who have a more familiar schedule system. And I can ask you offline if nobody else is thinking about that, but
Certainly.
okay.
Okay. Any other members? Ms. Burnell? Yes, ma'am.
What grade do you all start at? Do you start at the 10th grade, or when does Move On When Ready start at
It
your
is
school?
9th through 12th grade.
9th through 12th. Okay, so then what happens with the seniors? Because if their time is up, do they stop just at the spring, then they're done?
Well, we've come into a few problems with this. Oftentimes, they will not come winter because they will need, for example, they'll need 3 courses to graduate. They'll take those 3 courses at the high school because they begin in January and end in May. But say at Georgia Military College, they can only handle 2 of those courses. They would take those 2 courses for winter. They would still need 1 course to graduate high school. They would only have the spring term to take that 1 course. They cannot enroll in high school because you're in the middle of the high school spring semester, and they cannot be funded through this program for spring. So it poses a problem to some kids, and it has, to where they have to take it in the summer term and graduate late. or they pre-plan ahead and not attend winter and stop Move On Ready and just attend the high school spring semester.
Okay, is that good, ma'am? Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Representative Plum? This is a hearing only, so go ahead. And
I think that
I
gives
want,
y'all, I think that gives y'all the basics of what we're trying to accomplish for these kids. It sounds a little complicated, but it's not overly. We're making them stop, many of them who I call them go-getters, when they're trying to do the right thing by what we've asked them to do, simply because of the way our law is worded. Legislative Council has drafted something that would fix that. I'm really interested now in hearing from the Georgia Student Finance Commission as to what problems they may think this may cause, so we can go now to the second level and try to fix that also.
great. And we have our favorite. We ought to just make him a committee member, I think. Chris Green will be up, and if you'll just yield the spot there, and or he can go over here, or Chris, you can go to the other one, whichever you'd like.
Questions?
Because we have some questions for you. Y'all, this is Chris Green, Georgia Student Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, to the bill author. As an agency, we have no position on the bill. We do think there'd be a fiscal impact, and so just based on current usage from Georgia Military College, they are our second or third highest user of Move On and Ready. Based on invoices we received last year, this past fall, this is FY17, received invoices for 1,332 students for a total of $1.5 million. So if we were to assume another quarter at that usage rate, we're looking at another $1.5 million. There are three parts here to take into consideration. We have the tuition amount that we pay for the student, but then the law also tells us if they're enrolled in another term, we have to pay for a book and a fee allowance as well. And so those three things are all adding together. I heard a question kind of how other systems deal with this, how other post-secondary institutions. So on the semester system, we have fall, spring, and summer. For those on the quarter system, we have summer, fall, winter, spring. For these eligible post-secondary institutions that have non-standard terms, I believe the two letters that were shared with you from previous GSFC presidents stated that invoices could be combined from different non-standard terms and submitted to us during a single session. So for example, a university system, if a student's enrolled in 5 hours for a Maymester and then 7 hours in a summer term, they would combine that invoice to us and submit one invoice for 12 hours during the summer term. So, Mr. Chairman, that estimate is just a rough back of the envelope, best we could do based on what they're currently using if we were to look at adding another quarter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I was just wondering, how does this compare with other Move On But Ready students? I mean, do they get the same amount of money per year, whether they're a quartile or a quintile or whatever?
Yes, ma'am. So for our public institutions, those students receive full tuition up to the hour limit. For most of our private institutions, they get a $250 per semester hour for those private institutions that are on the semester system. And then for Georgia Military College that's on the quarter system, they get $187. So 3 semesters times $250 works out to about $750. 4 quarters times $187, $748. Then $50 per term, semester or quarter for mandatory fees. And then the same for the $15, for books. And these all were recommendations that came from the 2015 dual enrollment task force. And so I'd have to do a little bit of research to find out who all provided input. That was prior to my tenure, but that's where all these are stemming from. And I'd be happy to provide a list based on other institutions and kind of what their usage is.
So it depends on the tuition of the individual institution?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Depends on how many hours the student is taking and where they are.
So it's not out of line? I mean, it's similar? Or, as you were asking about, how is it pro rata?
I'd have to look based on other students. We have some students, that take more than 30 hours and some that just take 1 or 2, so it's a very student-specific award.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Excuse me, do you have a question for?
Yeah, and Mr. Addison and I were talking, and he was gonna try to clarify something regarding that, if he may, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Absolutely, please.
Just wanted to clarify the amount of students that would actually take that 4 term. Not all students attend the summer term. They just attend fall 1, fall, winter, and spring. So not taking an average of the regular academic year wouldn't necessarily be the accurate number. I would say that around 600 to 700 students would partake in this, which would bring about $660,000, as the average Move On Ready recipient receives $1,100 per quarter at our school.
So, committee, this is a hearing, and I know you haven't had an opportunity to look at what Representative Fleming brought us for the evidence. So during the next week, I hope you take time to talk to Representative Fleming, and also Representative Williams. He knows that school also well. But and just kind of ferret this out and learn a little bit more about it as we do. But that's it for this one. Thank you, guys,
Thank you,
and
Mr.
we'll
Chairman.
get back with you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman. We
Jim.
appreciate it.
Next one we're going to listen is House Bill 432, and in your folder, you got Representative Matt Dubnik, and you've seen him here, a member of our committee, and so we look forward to. It's not his first bill. You've been in another committee, I believe, with a bill, and as he gives an eye roll.
We only
And,
changed one word, Mr. Chairman.
Right, but when you're ready, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some gentlemen here who are going to help me with this presentation and be able to answer any questions as well.
Do you want them to go ahead and just pull up, or
That'll be great.
if they will, when they come up, just identify themselves, so we'll.
Your name and who you're with, please.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, Theo Anderson. I'm with Herzing University.
Thank
Glad to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring to you today House Bill 432. This is, as you heard Theo mention, with Herzing University, had approached me to speak about the language that governs an institution. We're going to use a couple of technical terms here, if you will, one being a for-profit or proprietary institute, the other being a nonprofit. And so Herzing University has recently modified their structure of their organization to go from a for-profit school to a nonprofit school. That was done for two reasons. One, the founder of the university wanted the university to be perpetual. He wanted it to exist after he was gone. The other reason was he also believed that all students at the university should be able to receive state funding from the various states that they operate in. I believe that number is 8 total states that they operate in. And in certain states, they needed that nonprofit status for their students to receive state funding. However, by the code that we have here in Georgia, it says that if you are a nonprofit entity, for your students to be receiving state funding, you must be SACS accredited. Well, in this case, Herzing University has what I'm going to use the phrase a sister accreditation. It's the same accreditation entity that oversees Notre Dame, Northwestern, Ohio State. So it's not a fly-by-night accreditation. So what we are proposing here, and I can certainly give you more facts and figures on Herzing, I do want to be clear that the students at Herzing are currently receiving state funding in Georgia. So my belief is that the university is taking steps to perpetuate and further enhance their standing and their ability to educate Georgia students. This is not creating additional funding need within the state of Georgia. Again, these students are currently receiving that. So if you will take a look at the bill, what we are adding language is that in addition to the SACS accreditation language on line 23, beyond that, that an institution that otherwise meets the requirements except Sachs shall be deemed an approved school, meaning approved to receive state funding, if they fall under these other statements here in the bill within the last 5 years, which in this case, Herzing does fall under that. It is our belief and understanding that Herzing University would be the only entity, in this case in the state of Georgia, that would be impacted. But again, Mr. Chairman, I do think it important to point out that we're not asking for additional funds. We're not asking for new money. This is just to allow those students who made a choice to attend that university made a decision to further strengthen themselves, that we continue to allow them to receive that. So again, I can answer any questions or provide more facts. The committee, Theo is here as well as the president, and the campus is here in Georgia, in Buckhead. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I just have a couple that I'll just add into, as others chime in, I'm sure, in a minute. How many number, Mr. Anderson, of students do you have in Herzing currently here?
We currently serve, as Mr. Chairman, approximately 600 students on ground residential and an additional 500 students throughout the state of Georgia, so 1,100 students throughout all our modalities.
Okay. And I think, Representative Dubnik, we'd really done our homework in making sure that this didn't affect any funding, it was good with those who oversee Hope dollars with a eagle eye on this bill, and I appreciate it. One other question I have is, this doesn't in any way undermine the accreditation process, does it? You will have to maintain accreditation.
Yeah, that is correct. And just to clarify that, we recently went through our reaccreditation process with Higher Learning Commission, which is the accrediting body that he mentioned accredits Notre Dame and other institutions in the Northeast. And we received no findings from that, and an additional 10 years, which is the standard reaccreditation, similar to our sister institution Sachs offers.
I would just point out the reason they have that Higher Learning Commission accreditation is their main campus is in Wisconsin, and that is HLC is the accrediting agency for institutions located in north central United States. Again, Northwestern, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, et cetera. So just wanted to explain why they have that accreditation.
Got a question, I believe is it Representative Bentley? Is that you? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this legislation forward. I'm just curious to know, just for a point of clarity, this university is not currently accredited by Sachs?
That is correct.
So what does that mean for a student that's enrolled in this university after they complete their studies at this university and decide they may want to transfer down to my university, Fort Valley State University? Will those credits be able to be transferable and acceptable to an institution that's a part of the university system of Georgia?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. Obviously, we cannot guarantee that credits transferred anywhere. It's up to the receiving institution. But I can tell you, we've had hundreds of students that transfer to all universities throughout the state of Georgia and not having issues with their credits transferring. And that's based on our regional accreditation.
Okay. Follow-up question, please. What methods, I know it was mentioned that we believe that Herzing University is the only university that would be possibly impacted by this legislation. What work has been implemented to ensure that we are certain this is the only university in this state that will be affected by this legislation?
I'll answer that for you.
Okay.
That what we did, Representative Bentley, is through Legislative Council, and also the Governor's Office as Legislative Council has reviewed it and has defined it. It really is very specific to Herzing.
Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other committee members have a question? Well, at this moment, I'd like to, this one would be up for a vote if the committee chooses to. I'd be acceptable to a motion if there is one.
Second.
Second. Got a motion second. Any discussion further, the committee members? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
All right, committee, if you'll look, their next one is going to be 448. Pardon? Oh, really? Well, crack staff. They say it's cold in here. Yeah, I'm looking over there, Representative, it's turned down as low as it'll go. I can see it from here. Oh, it's cold. Would you want to turn it up? Oh, okay, we're not gonna be here that long, okay.
We may.
Okay. Another one of our committee members has the next bill, 448, that we're adding to the agenda. You'll look, Representative Williams and I have been working on this for a while. Has everybody got it?
Yes, sir.
And I won't steal your thunder.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I don't know that I've got any thunder to be stolen, but thank you. And I do appreciate the time and effort you have put into this and working with me and the agency on this. Committee members, we should be working off of LC 411043. Hopefully we're all on the same page there, HB 448. This is agency legislation that we're bringing forth for the Georgia Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission, we'll refer to as NPEC, or the commission that updates their exemption code section and also revises board structure membership, which we'll speak to a little more in detail. It is supported by the governor's office, and Corinna Robinson is here. She is the executive director of NPEC, and again, we've been working closely with her and the chairman on this.
Chair. Representative Williams.
Yes, sir.
So, where I'm all about education, and I'd like to pause you for a moment to allow our guests to tell exactly what they do
Yes,
before we
sir.
move on.
I'm fine
So
with
that
it, Mr.
our
Chairman.
committee will know the purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's good to be before y'all again. As just a quick overview, a few weeks ago, I was able to present before the joint Senate and House Higher Education Committees and to give an overview of what this agency does. So the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission, we regulate and govern mainly the for-profit colleges is what most people are familiar with. Our mission is to make sure that these schools are educationally sound and financially viable. Last year, we authorized 291 schools to operate in the state of Georgia. Those were primarily the non-public schools and institutions. What I'll get into a little bit further, since we mainly in our legislation is about the exempt code section. So you're familiar with the university system of Georgia, then you have your technical college system of Georgia. Those are exempt from us. So then you have NPEC, which it basically regulates the remaining types of schools that are operating and offering post-secondary education in Georgia. We do have a minimum standards at each one of these schools, a big process they have to go through. They apply online to us, and we authorize them annually. So we are constantly in communication with them each year. They have to be renewed. If they do get approved, they have to renew each year. That's just basically just a really very brief overview. But any school that's not really part of the public university system, technical college system, and then for a large part, the Independent College Association, the private schools, are exempt from us as well.
And also, I want to add that you put out an annual report that I'll be glad to send the members so they can take a look at it and see what y'all are up to. We'll make sure that happens with your help.
Thank you, Chairman. And that our annual reports are also posted on our website. We have a wonderful website that also you can do a search of any school in Georgia and do a keyword search if you're interested in if we are authorizing that school and what type of programs they offer. It's all on our website as well.
And I have to tell the committee, when we first met, that's the first thing my crack staff did was I sent them out looking about them, and that's where we found their annual reports for the past few years and kind of learned real quickly before we met what they did. Thank you for letting me interrupt you, Representative Williams.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. Sometimes in the world of higher education in Georgia, we've got so many good players that it is hard to tell the players without a program. So thank you for that opportunity. We're trying to accomplish several things with HB 448. Again, we'll speak to those in more detail. We'll talk about some recommendations from the Attorney General's office that we're seeking to implement with this, amending Chapter 3, Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia. Again, we've spoken to the exemptions within NPEC, and we're seeking to work on that and the maintenance of those exemptions provided for thereby. There's some specific language relative to John Marshall Law School, which it seeks to accurately reflect their current status and to continue to exempt them under the original legislative intent, and we'll be talking about that. And one of the last things the bill does is structural. It revises the membership of the NPEC commission or board and does provide for completion of those terms, but downsizes the board a little bit, both from a cost efficiency standpoint and an effectiveness standpoint. The commission currently exists 15 members representing 14 congressional districts and 1 at-large seat, and this will remove the congressional district qualifications, shrink the board down a little bit to 11 members to be appointed by the governor. Will be a revision to the Board of Trustees of the Tuition Guarantee Trust Fund that coincides with the changes that we'll be speaking to in the commission membership. So that, in a nutshell, is what the bill seeks to accomplish. And Mr. Chairman, with your concurrence, I'm going to turn the mic over to Director Robinson now to speak in more detail on the nuances of the bill.
Absolutely. Please go
Thank
ahead,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Williams. Once again, thank you, Chairman, for being a sponsor. We have Representative Dempsey and Representative Gardner for being sponsors on our agency legislation. I'm going to walk through, since y'all do have a copy of the bill, I'm going to kind of walk through this and give you the lines. To expand on what Representative Williams was saying, this proposed change stems from the fact that the Attorney General's office has advised the Commission that it does not currently have the authority to apply specific qualifying rules to schools desiring to become exempt. In addition, the Commission does not have the authority to require information on a periodic basis to confirm that an exempt institution is maintaining the qualifications for an exemption. So this provides a loophole in the code which can prevent an institution to claim they are exempt yet conduct business in a manner which would actually require an application for an authorization to occur. So the current legislation seeks to close that loophole and enable the Commission to create rules, regulations, and policies applicable to exempt institutions. The Commission has had such ability to do so for non-exempt institutions since the creation of the code in 1990. So what we're trying to accomplish with these changes is to create a logical process to enable the Commission to ensure that schools that should be exempt are exempted, and the schools that should not be exempted are not. So the sole driving force behind this change is to better protect students in all educational situations, and thus closing that loophole serves that purpose of protecting the students. If this legislation should be passed, our Board of Commissioners will have to vote and approve any policy that results from this code change, and which this was the same process the Board of Commissioners used in creating the authorization process, which is based on our minimum standards, which is found in the code. So that, and what I forgot to point out, so what I just mentioned, that code section is on page 4, and it's lines 116 through 120. So it's just a few sentences, and this is language that the Attorney General recommended that we use that gives us the authority to set up those rules and regulations and policies to request that schools file for exemption with us and that they maintain an exemption. So the next change in the exemption code section only applies to John Marshall Law School. If you'll flip to page 2, lines 39 through to 52 is that language. So currently, NPEC has a MOU with John Marshall Law, which states that we will seek to have the wording in this paragraph undated to reflect their current characteristics as an American Bar Association accredited institution recognized by the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education as an entity whose students are eligible to receive federal financial aid. Let's see. And just to kind of give you a little bit of historical background on this exemption code section, which was once again created solely for John Marshall Law and Woodrow Wilson Law School, which is now closed. So at the time of NPEC's creation in 1990, they were subject to regulations and standards established by the Georgia Supreme Court. Then in 1998, the state bar modified the requirements for bar admission, allowing only ABA accredited law school students to take the bar exam. So John Marshall has since been able to meet the qualifications to become accredited by the ABA. So this code section is to update or continue to exempt John Marshall from NPEC under the original legislative intent, but under its present qualifications, and then also to become, NPEC will become the student complaint recipient so that they can receive federal financial aid funds. Back in 2015, for some of the committee members who were here, I had agency legislation then to satisfy a federal financial aid law, which is 34 CFR section 66.43B. Any school receiving federal financial aid should have a outside entity for students to file complaints. So NPEC, the governor designated NPEC to be that agency to receive those student complaints, and so we've put that into our code section, and we inadvertently left out John Marshall. So that they did run into a problem getting federal financial aid because our code section did not have it that we were their complaint recipient. So this will correct that and also allow them to remain exempt since they are ABA accredited. The next change that we do have is to the commission membership, which you'll flip to page 4 and 5, and this is that shows the language down in section 2, starting with line 125. So what we're going to be doing is removing the requirement of appointments by congressional district. So we're changing from 15 members to 11 members appointed by the governor. And this was my recommendation to the governor's office as part of their zero-based budget review that my agency is going through. So this will help alleviate some administrative and budget burdens on NPEC. So we have 9 full-time staff members, and we have a 15-member governing board. So this will have some budget savings by having fewer members to reimburse mileage and per diems. Now, there will still be representatives serving on the commission that represents the non-public post-secondary education institutions. So we'll have at least 1 member from a degree-granting institution and at least 1 member from a non-degree granting institution. These are non-public post-secondary education institutions that will have representatives if they're offering degrees or if they're offering non-degrees, which is also a certificate. Additionally, what is not in here that we're adding is to add a representative from an exempt institution. So we have a very large exempt institution code section, so we could have representative from the Board of Regents, technical schools, the private colleges, anybody who would fall underneath that exemption. And subsequently, since we're changing the membership and by adding that exempt institution representative, we have to go down to our code section, which is for the Tuition Guarantee Trust Fund Board of Trustees. That is on page 5, section 3. So that is a 5-member board. And the same language that's in the commission membership exists in the Board of Trustees, where there's 1 member from a degree granting post-secondary educational institution and 1 member from a non-degree granting post-secondary educational institution. So in order to match the commission membership, which now includes an exempt institution representative, that gives 3 out of 5 members representing post-secondary education schools. So it kind of gives a 3 out of 5 uneven balance if needed. So what we've proposed is just to say at least 2 members of the Board of Trustees shall represent post-secondary educational institutions. So I mean, it doesn't have to be a non-public, it could be one of the exempt institutions. It gives room there for 2 members to serve, to represent those institutions. And just as a recap, from if you weren't at my presentation a few weeks ago, the Tuition Guarantee Trust Fund is a insurance pool of funds available for students of closed institutions. That's the institutions that Impact does authorize. So it's like it is a safety net for students, which is designed to provide teach out or reimbursements to students if those institutions fail to honor their commitments. As of December 31st, 2016, we have $3.47 million in the fund. And that's all that I have, what this bill does. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, this is a great questioning group. We'll start with Representative Gardner.
Thank you. I mean, I think that one of the responsibilities that seems important to me is that it is a place for people to issue complaints. And I see you have 15 board members, maybe you're going to have 10, but you have 9 full-time staff.
Correct.
Is that enough to, I mean, I know there are a lot of institutions that are actually regulated by you.
Correct.
I mean, is that enough? I mean, are you able to answer all the complaints? We're adding a law school, and the number of these kinds of institutions is certainly growing in our state.
Correct. I'm not going to look back, make up a number. I have to look back at our annual report, which outlines how many student complaints we've received. I think it was around 30 in FY16. So we are able to respond to the student complaints. Our standards administrators, we have 5 full-time, and so we divide up the schools. Their workload is anywhere between 50 to 60 schools. So always great to have extra standards administrators. The governor's office, the governor put in his budget in FY15, so I was able to hire 1 more standards administrator, so that helped. Always interested in having more standards administrators to help with the workload of the schools, but we do make adjustments. But as for the student complaints, now we refer these schools that we've taken on, like so that, for example, this law school, to satisfy this federal financial aid requirement. So far, we have not received any student complaints. Now, those students still need to go through that school's complaint process, and we refer, if they have not gone through it, it's not fair for us to go to the school. There's nothing we can do. We send them back to the school to go through that complaint process.
Okay.
So there is a due process when it comes to that, and then we start working with the schools on that.
Well, I think this is important. There are a lot of people who get caught in these kinds of institutions for unusual reasons. So I think what you do is really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that good, Representative Gardner? Is that good?
I'm happy. Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. You're happy, all right. Go, girl.
Well, maybe that was
Well, they would be absolutely thrilled to have you as an advocate for
Yes.
and learn more about them. I think when you see their annual report, you'll be it's pretty neat. I just have a question. No one else is blinking. And that $3.47 million you have now, annually, how much are you, probably boom and bust, I would imagine, just
I might actually
when a school
have it.
closes. I'm just curious, what's your payout of that?
Well, each school is very different, how much we have to end up paying out. And so if we have a school, for example, that has students getting federal financial aid, well, that's a wash. We're not on the hook for that. The USDA, the federal government, basically forgives those loans of those students if a school does close. I'd have to look back, and I'm happy to pull some numbers as an example of some of the teach outs we've done. with some of these schools. But once we start getting into the mix and we start maybe finding other schools that these students can go to finish their program, which is the Teach Out, it ends up being a very small hit on the fund. We've had in 2015, Loras Technical College was here and based in Atlanta. They have 3 campuses. If a school closes, the max that we can give to that campus is $250,000, and that's in the Tuition Unity Trust Fund code section. And we were worried that times 3, that was going to be the max, because it looked like it was going to be such a very big hit with that school and that student if they closed abruptly. And in the end, it was ended up being a very, very small nominal impact actually on the fund. Because we were able to, other technical schools, either in the non-public world or the technical college system, took those students in, and we were able to have them finish programs. We also hired instructors. So MPEC becomes the owner of those school records. We basically start taking over all their records. We become the contact. We hired instructors to teach welding or HVAC classes. That's just an example. But, I can also provide and I do have that, a historical information as to the times when schools have closed, how the fund has taken a hit.
And the committee may also want to know how funds are accumulated. Or in your fund?
How do they pay into the
Yeah, how's that accumulated?
So when a school first gets authorized, they have to make 5 payments, annual payments, into the Tuition Guarantee Trust Fund, and it is a formula that we have, and it's based on their gross tuition, is how much they have to pay. So that's how it gets. But they pay into it for up to 5 years, and once they have that, they've satisfied it, and then their school and their students have access to the fund if they were to close.
Okay. Got a question from Representative Bentley.
I'm just curious to know, is Gupton Jones School of Mortuary Science part of your network?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Good. Thank you.
So this bill does affect the funeral home business. For y'all who are not on the floor, many times we're asked that question.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Does anyone else in the committee have a question for Vice Chairman Williams? Okay, this one's up for movement. If anyone so desires, if the committee would like to move on this, I'd be glad to have a motion. Ms. Gardner Booth, got a second by Mathiak. Any discussion? All those voting in favor? Aye. Aye. And any opposed? No. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. If you would, for the 2 bills that we just passed out, would you do the clerk a favor? He would like to have these. Except I know, we're good. I know he's got. And so the next 2 are for hearings. Yes, ma'am, they are. And Representative Evans, you're okay, great. You're here. We'll start with Representative Evans. Now, she's got House Bill 269. If you'll look in your folder, I also put, the representative put a beautifully written explanation of her bill in. She sent it to me, and so I hope you didn't mind that I did put it in everyone's folder.
Not at all, and thank you for the compliment.
And we're going to contemplate making everybody do this because it sure clears up a number of questions. And I look forward to the committee listening. And whoa, we got a whoa.
Is this it, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, the letter is to the Honorable Rick Jaspers. You'll see it's a multiple page document.
Is it in this document?
No, ma'am, it's not in theirs.
I don't have that.
Well, you could have mine. Would you like mine?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, okay.
Oh, no, I have 2.
Oh, no, right.
Thank you.
Sorry, ma'am.
That's okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today. I present to you House Bill 269, which does simply one thing, which is provides for full tuition HOPE grants to members of the Georgia National Guard and reservists. As you know, the regular HOPE grant covers only a percentage of tuition, so this puts the reservists and the guardsmen into a category that allows them to have a full tuition HOPE grant to attend a Georgia Technical College. It still does not provide for any fees or books. The reason for this is because the reservists and the guardsmen fall into a donut hole of sorts with the GI Bill. So they are the only part of the military members in our state that wouldn't have a tuition scholarship, a full tuition scholarship otherwise available to them, because the active military and retired military would have access to the GI Bill that they could use to attend a Georgia school. The fiscal note, which is also attached, is a whopping $62,000. And obviously we want to be smart when we're spending any money, but I would submit that's a really small price to pay for the service of these men and women, and also helps encourage attendance at our technical colleges so that we can get more of our Georgians out and working in a skilled workforce area.
I believe everyone's reading your document.
I'm happy to answer any questions otherwise. I will add one thing on the fiscal part of it. So $62,000 a year is the estimated cost. Right now, the lottery is doing well. We're at a point where there's at least 60 million new dollars going into the fund every year, and we're currently at a place where we have a very healthy reserve. We're required to hold 50% of the prior year's payouts, as y'all know, and that's right now at about $490 million, which is sitting safely in an account. And on top of that, we have $524 million that is available to spend. And this bill asks simply for $62,000 of it for our reservists and our guardsmen.
The number I heard was $1 billion in reserve at this moment.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
I just got a question. There's the other lighting up too. It's just for Zell Miller scholars. Hope that y'all see that. Yeah, I know that's been we've had another bill for just Zell Miller scholars just the other day.
Yeah, well, that's what I was.
Oh, okay, that's what. But no, I just want to make sure the committee saw that, and that we've looked at the fiscal note, and we'll be thinking about this later. But right now, Ms. Representative Mathayak.
Thank you so much for protecting our men and women that protect us. I appreciate that. So the estimate is 155 students?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's for, how long is this going to last? How many years?
I don't, it's not drafted with a sunset. If that was something that the committee wanted to consider, we could do it to see how it goes. But, I'd submit even if we doubled the attendance of guardsmen and reservists at our technical college system, we're still going to be somewhere around. I don't think we wouldn't exceed 300,000.
Right.
And I think that we should be so lucky to increase enrollment
Yes.
to that extent. But thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Good. Thank you, Representative Evans.
Thank
We
you
sure
very much for
appreciate
the
it.
time. I'll look forward to being back for a vote.
You bet.
Right. Thank you.
Now, I believe this is our members' first bill.
Yes.
It is, and you can sit right there, or you can, if you'd like, or you can move to the end where the pressure will increase.
Stay right here.
But you're looking now at House Bill 230, and if you'll pull it, make sure it's close enough to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and men and women. Today I come and I present to you House Bill 230. The purpose of House Bill 230 is to make sure that we have legislation that ensures that schools receiving funding from the student scholarship organizations do not discriminate based on race, gender, national origin, religion, sexuality, and disabilities. And so the purpose of this, just also for a clarification, this scholarship applies to students that are currently in our public schools. I realize it is in higher ed, However, it applies to students who are in elementary and high school, just for clarification purposes. What we want to do is to promote equality. So say, for example, if a student decided, or their parent decided that they wanted to move them to a private school, then they would be able to receive that funding, and they would not be discriminated against. That's the biggest gist of the bill, is that they are allowed to receive the money.
I always like to ask, you know, do you have a specific instance where having this in code would create a change?
I don't have a specific instance. One of the things that was looked at was, for example, if a student, if it was a Christian school, and say that a student of a different religion wanted to attend that school, that they would not be discriminated against.
Would I, you know, I think when I was looking at this the first time I saw it, I just wonder, does not federal law cover this currently? And that most of those that have access to dollars, state and federal, I'm just curious, are they not already under this?
Well, that was one of the things that I looked at, based on if a school is receiving federal funds, that you could not, that you would not be able to discriminate. But this money that they're talking about comes from that private scholarship, which is comes from the tax credit that parents receive, and it goes to that specific school. So it's actually the taxpayer, the state of Georgia, the taxpayers' money from the state of Georgia. So this is state funding, not federal funding.
Got a couple of questions from committee members. Vice Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for bringing this forth for our consideration. I've got a question for you on line 38 there, that line C, does not discriminate in hiring or admission on the basis of actual or perceived. And I have circled the word perceived, trying to get a grasp really on what that means in the context of this. And I'm having trouble whether or not that means that an individual perceives he or she is being discriminated against, or whether or not it means discrimination based on how someone perceives maybe one of these issues, whether it's disability, gender-related characteristics. Can you expand a little bit on the intent and meaning of the word perceived in the legislation?
I think it's more of the individual that is making the decision, and if the student should be accepted, what their perception is of that student based on these categories.
Do you have any thoughts, if this bill were to become law, sort of how that issue of perception would be judged and dealt with? That sounds like to me that could be a very gray, subjective area. I'm just curious about whether or not we might be creating problems for the students or the institutions or whoever.
Yes, I agree with you that it is somewhat vague, so that may be one of the things that we have to look at taking that word out of there, or finding a word that's more suitable, so that it does not become a problem, because as you said, you know, perception is
Right.
based on, and it's kind of sometimes hard to, you know,
Right.
make it a fact. It's not a fact.
Right, okay. Thank you very much for your
Okay,
response.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you. I think taking out the perception would be helpful.
Okay.
I was trying to figure this out from the beginning, but I think you answered my question. So this is related to that special scholarship fund that is a tax credit for Georgians in Georgia.
Yes.
So federal law doesn't apply to how that's administered.
No, because that's a state law, so it wouldn't have anything to do.
It's all under state law.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That helps me. I was trying to think who was getting these scholarships, and that helped me when you clarified. Thank you very much for bringing this. This is important.
You're welcome.
Who's number 8? Representative Dreyer. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm back to this actual or perceived as well. I can see how that can be confusing. First, thank you for bringing this.
You're welcome.
The way this is written, perceived seems to modify race, color, religion, sex, national origin, gender, etc. So, I mean, it would seem, I guess it was trying to get at what I perceive to be someone else's religion, and if I'm discriminating based on that. So a possibility would be to just delete all the actual or perceived, those 3 words, if it's trying to get at, rather than going down the rabbit hole of if someone perceives himself to be discriminated or not. I don't unfortunately have the basis in employment litigation to know how that's typically written, though. So.
And I'd love also like for you to do a little investigation, Representative, and prove to the committee that this isn't covered by federal law
Okay.
now. I think you'd hear the question again and again and again and again is that this does not. You know, I know this is federal tax policy, and I'd just be curious how that actually does. Who's down there? Chairman Dickey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think along what you were saying, who would you go to for remedy if this thing would be, if you would find that? Would you go to the federal government, or would you go to a state agency? I mean, I don't know about. I think it would be more federal or something.
Okay.
All right. Any other committee member have a question? Turn you off there, Chairman Dickey. I'm sorry. Well, thank you, Ms. Representative. I appreciate it. You've got some questions to look into.
Yes.
And appreciate you bringing that for us. Any other interesting items that we need to discuss besides thanking y'all for coming to our meeting? And Ms.
Thank
Liz, if
you.
you don't. Appreciate it. Our meeting's adjourned.